This is a very powerful episode, and Ryan Blair is a very powerful man with a beautiful story, and we went somewhere where I was not expecting us to go. We ended up talking about grief and losing loved ones and overcoming pain and tragedy in your life, overcoming hardship, adversity, and also having AlterCall moments, which we'll get into, and Ryan will explain. He shares his personal story in this episode, and it's very moving. Just a little background on who Ryan is, if you don't know about Ryan Blair. Ryan is a #1 New York Times bestselling author and serial entrepreneur who literally came from nothing and created so much over the course of his career. At the age of 21 years old, Ryan had already founded his first business called 24/7 Tech. And since then, he created and sold numerous other companies for hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of his career, you guys. In 2012, Ryan was named Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year and exited his company in a $792 million transaction. Blair now leads his new company, AlterCall, and is a committed father and philanthropist. I am so excited for you to meet him and to hear his story and to learn from him today. This man has so much wisdom. So get ready for a very powerful, touching episode that will really pull out your heartstrings. And without further ado, let's chat with Mr. Ryan Blair. Ryan, I'm so excited right now to have you on the show. We've been planning this for a while. We finally made it happen.
Yeah, it's long overdue.
Yes, so thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
So I'm really excited to talk to you about, of course, AlterCall. Mm-hmm. Before we get into AlterCall, though, I did my research on you, and I know like you come from very humble beginnings, and you've actually had to go through quite a bit of hardship in your life.
Yeah.
And if you're open to it,
I'm completely open.
I had a feeling you would be. I know you had some really painful moments when it comes to family. You know, your family, your son. Would you share a bit of that with us and kind of let us in that side of your journey?
Yeah. So, I guess the best way to describe my family environment growing up. Have you ever seen the TV show Shameless? Like there was a TV show about a family that was shameless. Well, my family was filled with all kinds of difficulties. So my father was a drug addict. He was a Vietnam vet. He was very violent. He brought back Vietnam with him. And for a period of time, he was very successful as an engineer. So we were firmly in the middle class. Then he got addicted to drugs, and then we went into poverty. So I had the taste of what life could be like. We had a pool. We had nice clothing. There were presents underneath the Christmas tree, and I was living in a good neighborhood. I was involved in sports up until about 13 years old, and that's when my dad let the drugs overcome him. He ended up leaving. He just left one day, and I never saw him again, and that was when I was 13. So then my mother, who was a caregiver for 6 of us, then had to move into a 1-bedroom shack, and I lived in an impoverished neighborhood. It was it was a gang culture and gang environment at the time. And so next thing you know, I was forced into a gang when I was about 13, 14 years old. And I was in a gang for a period of a couple of years. And I went to juvenile hall a couple times, got in a lot of trouble, got in a lot of fights. And I was what's called an enforcer in a gang. So that meant that I enforced the rules. And so I lived in that culture and that environment. In fact, that's where I learned a lot of leadership type stuff, ironically, is, when you're in a gang, there's all kinds of intimidation. There's fear of life and death. There's different rackets that people do entrepreneurially to earn income. And so in the middle class, I didn't learn much about entrepreneurship. But in poverty, I learned a lot about entrepreneurship. And then by the grace of God, when I was 17 years old, my mother started dating a man who was a very wealthy real estate entrepreneur. And he fell in love with her, and she had like a Cinderella story. And she wouldn't move out of the house that we lived in to move in with him unless I came. So I had to basically shift from living in poverty to now all of a sudden living in the wealthy class.
Wow.
And so I got to see all 3 classes of our system that we have here in Western society: the middle, poverty, and then the wealthy class. And then for me, I decided to become an entrepreneur because I saw him. I thought he was no smarter than me. There's no reason why I can't do the same things he's doing. And it would seem so easy because entrepreneurship the legal version of it. You don't have to worry about being shot. You don't have to worry about getting arrested. You don't have to worry about the intimidation and all the other various things that happen politically in a gang environment. You just have to, just hustle. And so I was like, why wouldn't anybody be a legal entrepreneur if they have the choice to being one? And so I decided to become an entrepreneur at 19 years old. Wow. And I'm 42 now, so I'm going on my third decade. I closed my second decade, opening up my third decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the biggest, because I've heard, actually, I feel like Gerard has, he was on the streets too and gang, and now you guys are in partnership, and a lot of similarities there. So what do you feel like for you was the biggest like leadership, like takeaway that you got from that? Like what have you applied from that totally different scenario into the one you're in now?
Well, there's a few moments in my life that I can reflect on where I was called to do the work that I was doing. So one, I remember having about 100 people working for me in the gang, and I would call these meetings, and I would discipline people, and I would call them to greater action. And so I was like, 14, 15, 16 years old, leading people, grown adults. And so I never had a challenge of getting people together and then calling them to action. Now the actions I call people toward are just good, where before I was calling them to action to benefit the gang, and really, I was calling them to negative action.
Yeah.
There's a lot of entrepreneurial characteristics that are very similar. I mean, a gang is just a illegal organization, but you have a hierarchy, much like a business.
Yeah.
You have titles. You have people that are responsible for certain revenue, numbers and things like that. So it's just an illegal business. There's not much of a difference between that and a legal business.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So if we go back to like, okay, so your father left when you're around 13, you said, right? And then you got into this, you got into gangs and kind of like rebelled, it sounded like.
Yeah.
And then you had some experiences also with your mom, correct?
What meaning in terms of, my mother was an alcoholic for most of my life.
Okay.
And she was violently abused by my father. So she never really, never overcame that. She could never really get past the damage that he did to her. For a period of time when she was with my stepfather, it was good.
Yeah.
But then when he passed away, she relapsed and fell down a flight of stairs and was in a coma for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I love my mother. I'm a mother's boy, so she's passed away. I have nothing bad to say about her or my father, who recently passed as well. I've forgiven them, and I'm filled with love just to know that, I have them as angels in the afterlife, right? So,
yeah. And so it's crazy that we're actually talking about this, because I was just speaking with someone yesterday, I feel like, or the day before yesterday, about loss and grief. And I have never had that happen personally in my life, where someone I've been really close to all my life I've lost them and they've died. I've never had that. And so I'd love to know, like, coming from you, what that experience was like, and then also like how you got through that. Yeah. And even for our listeners, I know it's going to be very valuable.
Well, for one, my heart completely opens up when people want to talk about this subject, because the last decade I experienced a lot of grief. I lost over 7 relatives that were very meaningful to me, and friends. And if you haven't suffered from grief yet, you're going to. So if I can give a service and teach people what I've learned about the subject, but it's an honor to. First and foremost is if you're a spiritual person like I am, you really just have to rely on the fact that these people haven't really died, that there's a lot more life in death than you can imagine. And it's really hard to do that at first, because you're thinking you've lost them, you'll never hug them again, you'll never smell them again, you'll never have them with you again. Yeah. But if you're spiritually connected, you actually will. You haven't lost anything, you've actually gained something. And yes, you've lost some things in the physical, but you've gained some things in the spiritual. And it can be very magical if you learn how to tap into that. In my life, I'd lost a lot of people, and I didn't have the spiritual strength and foundation that I have now. Yeah. And so it really wounded me deeply, and I suffered deeply, and I was in agony, particularly when I first lost my mom. I was in agony because I loved her so much, and I had so many things that I wanted to say to her that I hadn't. I had so many regrets because she was hospitalized for nearly 7 years and in a bedridden state. And so there were times that I should have been visiting her that I wasn't. There were times where I was self-medicating because I couldn't handle the pain, and I wasn't with her. So I had a lot of regret and a lot of pain. But if you're going through grief, one, you have to find people that can suffer with you. A lot of people that haven't experienced it, they don't know how to even talk to you about it, right? So the people that were reaching out to me to try to help me through this period of time, they were just saying all the wrong words. And so if you have a friend that's grieving, you just want to be like, listen, I'm here to listen to anything that's on your heart, no matter how crazy it sounds, no matter how painful. I'm not going to try to cheer you up. I'm not going to try to give you a pep talk. I'm not going to say, you're being a victim right now, because you are a victim in the moment of losing your mother. You're like, you're a victim. You didn't bring this on, right? So
are those some of the wrong thing? Yeah, I would love to know more of that. Like, so basically pep talks, trying to get you out of it.
Yeah,
what
trying
else?
to distract you from it. Like, I have friends that suffer from grief, and their friends will be like, let's go to Vegas. And like, that's the last thing that a person should do in grief is distract themselves. They should really, try to connect to the soul of the person that they lost, and try to ask for gifts, and try to ask for it to be something that they have gratitude toward, and try to shift it from, you have to embrace the pain. Healing is painful. If you try to distract yourself from the pain, if you try to cover it up, if you don't really acknowledge it and really deeply try to understand the roots of it, then it'll be with you for the rest of your life. And so many people, they still have traumas with their parents, and their parents have passed, and they still can't get over them, right? And so when a person is passing away, it's an opportunity for you to try to heal. And so you, as a supporter of that person, should be trying to encourage them to heal. And you should be holding space for them to go to the painful places. Now, sometimes it's hard for us to do that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because it makes us think about our parents that we will likely one day lose, or it might make us think about loved ones that we've lost. And so if you're a friend in that time, you just check in on the person. You say, I want to let you know that you're loved. You don't say, what can I do for you, right? Or is there anything I can do for you? Because then you're just giving me the responsibility of you, right? It's like if I'm suffering and you're like, hey, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. You're basically giving me a task during my suffering to let you know if there's something you can do for me. What I would want a friend to do is be like, listen, I know you're suffering right now. I'm going to come over and help take out the trash for you.
So taking more initiative.
Yeah, well, and just trying to, I know you're suffering right now. And I want to let you know I love you. Just taking action as opposed to saying, let me know if there's anything I could do for you.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is the most painful thing, because now I have a person.
And now it's like your responsibility to reach out, which is already hard enough.
Yeah, like if I don't reply to you, you're mad at me.
Yeah.
And and so what I will generally say, or what people of grieving generally say, is they'll say, oh, everything's fine. There's nothing wrong. Because we don't want to deal with you trying to find things that you can help me with. We just want somebody to suffer with us. Right? We don't want to have you, especially for those of us in the motivational space, like no pep talks, no, you'll get over this. Like, I don't want somebody to tell me you'll get through this, because
this too shall pass.
No.
It doesn't work.
Well, no, what I want someone to say is like, I can't believe the relationship you must have had with your mother, and how painful this must be for you.
And to kind of like help, like actually be there to listen for you to talk it through.
Yes. Just be a listener. And then, we need to know, because what we do is we try to close everybody off from this conversation, because they're not having it the right way with us. And so we try to say that we're fine when we're not. We try to say it's all good. I've got the help I need when we don't. Because we just don't want to deal with you trying to figure out how to help us. Right? Because you're trying to help us, but you're not doing it to the way we need it.
Yeah.
And so now we have to deal with you and other people trying to help us. And they're frustrated with us because we can't, tell them exactly what we're feeling or how we're feeling, because we have no idea. And when a person elevates, your body changes, your soul changes when that
Yeah.
person changes their elevation.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going through physical change, you're going through a mental change, you're going through a spiritual change when that
Yeah.
elevation happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have no idea, the stuff that's going to come up, the trauma that's going to come up, the regret, the pain. And so like as a caregiver in this situation, you just want to be like, look, I'm here to help this stuff come up and help you talk about it.
Yeah, so you can actually work through it and
Yeah.
process it
Yeah.
and feel it, like feel what you need to feel in order to heal.
Yeah.
So, and question, you mentioned briefly, so when you said self-medicate,
Yeah.
what was that specifically for you? Like, I know for everyone, they kind of have
Yeah.
their own self-medication. What was it for you?
Well, it was a lot of everything. I was good at it. I would say my go-to self-medication was alcohol for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it shifted to weed for a period of time. And then alcohol plus other drugs that would come up.
Mm-hmm.
So, alcohol plus cocaine. There was plenty of nights where it would turn into that. And then it would turn into relationships or encounters with women that it wasn't.
It was like a void-filling thing.
I was losing the woman I loved the most in my life. And so I was self-medicating by, attempting to seek that heart connection with
other
people that weren't necessarily the right people to seek that heart connection with. Or they were the right person, but I couldn't really give fully of my heart at the time. I could only give, that moment. But then I had to go the next day and go back to the reality that I was losing my mother, or the reality that my son had autism, and I had such conflict going on in that environment as well.
And that was at the same time.
Yeah. So I couldn't really open up my heart the way I wanted to, or the way I was capable of, because, I would have to compartmentalize it. I'd have to deal with my son and his autism and my heart being broken on that subject. And I'd have to deal with the loss of my mother, my heart being broken on that subject. And then I would self-medicate as opposed to really taking time to deeply connect to me. I was in this pattern. But then the other activity I did during that time was work. And I worked really hard. And I accomplished great things that most people, dream of. Buying and selling companies, having my book become a #1 New York Times bestselling book. And so that was the only thing that I could do that would take my mind off the loss that I was suffering.
Yeah, you were immersing yourself in that.
Yeah, and I could do it really good, and it gave me fulfillment. So I couldn't really be open to a relationship and genuine, even friend connections during that time, because, I was either self-medicating or suffering or working, with a lot of insatiable appetite for success.
Can I just say it's interesting, and I've never told you this either, is like my biggest fear, and I shared this in front of, like, this is one of my biggest fears, like top 3 biggest fears for me. And I shared this in front of a speaking event that I did in Miami. They actually asked me, like, all the speakers to share one of their biggest fears. And for me, it was losing a loved one.
Yeah. It is.
Because and why? It's because my fear is I won't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So as you're saying all this, and that's also why I'm so genuinely curious.
Yeah.
Is because, like, the self-medicating, the numbing out, the avoiding, the all those things. Like I work, like, I think of my mom. I think of like my dad. I think, like, we don't want to think about these things, of course.
Yeah.
But when it does pop up for me, I'm like, holy smokes! Like, I don't know how I would deal with that, and it's just such a, like, a deep rooted thing, and I don't know, because I've never experienced it. And yes, you're right, when we open this, you said, like, everyone is going to experience it. Like, it's inevitable. With the gift of life comes the gift of death. It's you can't have one without the other. So it's just really interesting for me to hear this from you. I've only had one other guest on my show who's talked about this, Nita Bushin. I don't know if you know her, but she talked about grief. It was one of the first episodes, and she had kind of she went a different route with it. And so I love hearing this from you. And also
one thing I'll share with you is there's a process. So if you do this process now, you'll have less pain later. And the process that I used, because my mother went on hospice for a year, so I would go see her routinely. And the process I used was I would go and see her, and I'd tell her everything that I remembered that was funny or that I had humor about. Like she caught me doing this or caught me doing that. And I'm like, remember that time you caught me doing this? You know, I was a young boy hitting puberty, and she'd catch me doing weird things. And I'd be like, Mom, I have to talk to you about this. You caught me doing this weird thing. Do you remember that? She'd like, oh yeah, I remember. And like, she'd be like knocking on the door, and you know, I'd be taking long showers, and I'd go to her and talk to her. So I go to her and talk to her about the things that were like embarrassing, you know, the stuff that you try to like, you don't want to talk to your mom about. So I talked to her about those things. I talked to her about the things that I needed forgiveness for. You know, I broke she had these figurines. And when I was a kid, I had a temper, and I broke a bunch of these figurines. And when I went to her and I said, Mom, I want to apologize for breaking those figurines when I was 13 years old, she was like, yeah, that pissed me off. And like, I had no idea this was unresolved in her mind. Like she still had some stuff to talk about there. And then I would talk to her about the things that I needed to forgive her for. Right. So, you know, Mom, I forgive you for these things. And that process of
how beautiful that you got to do that.
Yeah. And I did it, you know, many times. But the reason why I share that with you is I had the benefit of knowing that my mother would pass at some point, although it turned out to be 7 years. I had this spiritual process where I would go in and connect to her soul and then release the negative that we needed to release mutually. And then I would ask her to do the same. Tell me what you think's funny. You know, tell me what I need to forgive you, or you need to forgive me, or, you know, I need to be forgiven for, and you need forgiveness for. Now, what I would advise anyone is to try to do that stuff now. Right? Like if you have
start having those conversations.
Yeah. Because then when you do endure the loss at some point in time, we're going to lose our parents. When that does happen, you will have so much of the things that need to be resolved already resolved. So it's a spiritual process that I got to do. But now when I'm thinking about people that I love, I just call out and I'll tell them, let's talk about the fun times.
Yeah.
And then here's something I need, forgiveness for. Here's something that I need to forgive you for, and I need to talk to you about that, right? And if we do that while people are alive and with us, the pain that we feel when they elevate is not nearly as much. And the last item is, I know this for a fact, when my mother passed away, I could feel it like my navel, like it changed in my body. I could feel it as though my umbilical cord was like ripped out again. And she would come to me in my dreams. I'd feel her presence in my house. I could feel her voice. It happened to my sisters as well. They felt her soul after she had passed away. And so I knew that there was certainly a realm and a spiritual existence after death without a doubt. And so knowing that and connecting to that, then gave me all the faith that I needed to be able to really deeply connect to her. And I still, I didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't feel like I lost anything in the loss of my parents. I feel like I gained something.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I started to get a little emotional because it's a beautiful way to think about it, the way that you just shared. And it's also hard because it's releasing the physical attachment, like the missing piece, right? Missing seeing them here, missing their touch, the physical stuff, and releasing attachment to that and letting go of that that's a very powerful ascension that we can go through as humans.
And they can give you gifts, they can give you wisdom. I mean, if you think the love connection, you have to be in a state of love to connect to a past soul. So you have to connect. Love is that force, and if you create that love connection with the person that's passed, and you've removed all the trauma and all the drama, right? And you just cleanse that stuff out, you can actually connect and receive gifts. And I've no doubt that my mother is helping guide the AlterCall movement, helping guide me every single day. And I see her work everywhere. Yeah. It's not a question in my mind whatsoever.
So was it through this loss that you experienced, and also just, also just the pain, because at the same time you're having that experience with your son, and for a certain amount of time was he also taken away from you? Yeah. I wasn't able to see him for 6 months. So during the loss of my mother, I was alone for 6 months without anyone. And so there was a lot of painful nights. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Pain is the most healing thing in the world. And
healing is painful. And what I, in the 6 months that I really, I went to the roots of the pain that I was feeling as deeply as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I was going to change everything about me.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Yeah.
And, but pain could be a blessing. And so I broke wide open because of the tremendous amount of pain that I was experiencing. And so that's when I had my spiritual awakening.
So what, right around when? So during when all that was happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When my mother passed away on November the 2nd, I had a premonition that she would pass away, and this was October the 16th. And I went to her and I told her, Mom, I got to say goodbye to you. And she said, why? And I said, I just had a premonition that you're going to pass away. A voice said, it's time to go tell your mother goodbye. And I went and told her that, her staying in the pain that she was in was stopping me from being the leader that I needed to be. And that I needed her to elevate so I could elevate. And this was after 7 years of this traumatic situation that I was in with my family.
Yeah.
And I didn't think she would go right away. And once I freed her soul to leave her body, it did. And,
really?
Yeah. And she elevated November the 2nd.
Oh, wow.
And then I was crushed because I was like, wait, I wanted you
I
wanted you to go, but I was hoping you'd stay through Christmas. And I was hoping I'd have one more Thanksgiving with you.
Yeah.
And at that very time, I was weak. I was in a ton of pain. And a lot of the people that I had associated with, they weren't used to seeing me in that condition. And so they tried to do everything they could to get me out of that state. And it just drove me deeper and deeper into anger and deeper into pain. And, because I couldn't move from that state,
Yep.
I told my mother, you need to leave. It was basically her or me is what I told her. If you don't elevate, it's going to kill me. Because I was self-medicating. I was, making bad decisions. And I confessed to her that everything that I was doing when I wasn't seeing her. And she was shocked. She was like, I had no idea. I thought you were just working.
Oh, you told her everything?
Everything.
Okay.
I told her, there's ramifications to you continuing this way. And it's killing me. And yeah.
No, please.
Well, for 7 years, she was alive because I wasn't ready for her to go. She fell down a flight of stairs and was in a coma for 2 years. And I got permission from the courts to pull the plug. And I went to her and told her, Mom, I'm pulling the plug, but if you're in there and you want to live, you better wake up. And she woke up. And so I had a miracle happen right then and there because I wasn't ready for her to go. Yeah. She didn't want to be a vegetable, and she was in a vegetative state. She didn't want to look, she was a beautiful woman. She didn't want to, half her skull was removed. She had tubes coming out of her. She didn't want to live that way. But I wasn't ready. And so when I released her and gave her permission to elevate, she did. But I didn't know I didn't know the forces at work that I was bartering with.
Yeah. And
so when she elevated, I was destroyed because I could have seen her. The last days, I wasn't able to go see her because I was in so much pain. And I was, I knew that she was going to pass away. I didn't know when. I told people my mom's going to pass, and they were like, you've been saying that for 7 years. What are you talking about? And the last picture I have of her, she was waiting for me on Halloween. She took a picture of she was in a wheelchair, and she had a little hat on, a little thing, and she was being a witch, and she sent the picture, her nurse did. And I wasn't able to go see her because I was struggling with the custody of my son, and I was devastated that I couldn't take him trick-or-treating. And so I'd have to drive an hour to see my mom, and then sometimes I'd have a minute with her because her consciousness was in and out throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And then I'd drive an hour back to be by myself. And that's when the self-medication began. Yeah. Yeah. So I knew that she was fighting to stay alive until I was ready. But I wasn't. You're never ready.
Of course.
Never ready to lose a loved one.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt that. I know. I'm this is the first time I've full-blown cried on a podcast episode. But
it's beautiful.
Yeah, but because I feel it as I'm looking into your eyes, I can feel it, and so that's, energetically, I'm like, oh, got it. So, thank you
for like being so vulnerable and sharing something that I'm sure is like can still be, you know, it's, I mean, I can only imagine, you know, it's pulling deep from within. I can see that. So I appreciate you going there. And it's honestly supporting me more than you know, because this is truly, like, this is healing for me to be having this conversation with you.
To receive, we have to be vulnerable to have joy. Vulnerability is the gateway to joy.
It is.
And so if we close off our vulnerability, we close off our joy. And joy brings happiness. And so for people that say, oh, I'm not vulnerable and I don't have vulnerability in me, it's like you're missing the joy of life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you can equate it to tough talks like this one where we're talking about grieving, but just the vulnerability connected to the joy of music. Like, in order for me to perfect music, I have to sing in front of people. And in order to sing in front of people, I have to be vulnerable. And the more that I do that, the more that I receive the joy and the more that I perfect my craft. Right?
And the more connection. Like I feel so much more connected to God. I feel so much more spiritually connected when I'm vulnerable too. Like you feel more connected than ever before, versus like when we don't allow ourselves to go there, we feel isolated, we feel separated, we feel disconnected. You know, and
we live in a culture that criticizes vulnerability. You know, men shouldn't cry. You know, our leadership in our culture won't admit their faults, right? Politicians are always blaming other people. So we live in this blame society, regardless of your politics. It's like blame, blame, blame. Don't admit to faults. You know, men are taught not to cry. You know, you're taught to hide your emotions, suppress your emotions, right?
So I have a big question, just like hit me. So when you're in this pain, you're in this work. By the way, I didn't even expect to like fully go here with you. So thank you for just going where we're going. When you're in this like whirlwind, you know, you're in so much pain. You have friends that are like doing and saying and suggesting the wrong things. Like, what was it for you that like was the turning point? Like, what's the turning point, and what really supported you to like really going on your healing journey, you know, and creating who you are today, sitting in front of me, and where you are today spiritually. I know you're like, I love that about you. You're so grounded, so spiritually connected, and it exudes from you. So what was that shift moment or altar call moment?
Well, during my time alone, I was writing. I'm a writer, so I write a lot. And I was writing all of my thoughts, and I was asking myself some deep questions about those thoughts. I was also reflecting on the experiences that I had in my life and seeking to find a pattern. Like, you know, where was I at my best? I'd sold my company and stepped down as CEO. I knew that I was going to, you know, I knew I needed to take time off and rest and figure this thing called life out. And I knew that I was going to do something. I'd have another run. I didn't know what it was or how it was. And so, you know, the thing that really, you know, guided me through this process was prayer and deeply connecting to my spirituality, you know, my faith, connecting to my lost ancestors and loved ones, and seeking guidance. And, you know, and then seeking wisdom and reading. I reread every book that I'd ever read. I rewatched every documentary that ever had an impact on me. Rewatched movies that were meaningful to me. Reread my own books that I'd written. Went through journals. Like, I really sought to try to understand the pattern that my life was. And then I wanted to change that pattern. So, like, what was I going to keep for the new pattern? And what was I going to leave? And so the process of changing that pattern, but during that process of my awakening, my body changed. So I was working out. I was out in nature. I would see the magic and the beauty of nature. I would be blessed with shooting stars and birds flying by me. And, you know, so as I connected to myself and to my spirituality, I saw connection around me. And so that was giving me the positive feedback that I needed to just keep going. And one of the principles that, you know, I live by is the further you go, the further you see. So each day I would wake up, I'd get up at 3 a.m., I'd start my meditation, start my prayers, do my work, and just take, you know, a step that day. And slowly but surely, I was able to find a process to remove the pain that I had within me, the mental pain and the physical pain, because they're correlated. Your behavior and your biology are one. And so as I was like experimenting with these, so I was blessed that I lived in a nice house with a great view, and I was surrounded by a great canyon I could go hike in, have a great dog, I had great food, and I was able to, experiment with my body and my mind and my soul as the first patient, so to speak, with the process to remove the pain that was stopping me from living my life at its fullest.
And did you have someone like guiding you through this at all, or a mentor? Because the reason I'm asking too is because it sounds like, you created this, you're in this shift and you're like meditating, you're praying, you're connecting with nature. But was there something, was it just like hitting that low point? Because for me, I entered in like a 4-month long transformational journey. That's what, like, I was at a low point. I was on anxiety meds, every day. I was suffering severe like anxiety, depression. I had multiple like suicidal thoughts on a frequent basis. Like, I used to curl up in a ball and just wish I could disappear and die. Like, I didn't have any purpose. I just felt like I would look in the mirror and I hated who I saw, what I saw. And for me, like, I just randomly decided to enter this, like, a friend invited me to enter a 4-month long transformational journey. And that was really the catalyst that catapulted me into. So I was wondering, was there something like that for you or someone?
Yeah, there's been a number of people that reached out at that time that had the right heart. Gerard Adams was one of them. He showed up. Gentleman by the name of Andrew Sandler, gentleman by the name of Yehuda Berg. Yehuda's a Kabbalist, and he's a very spiritual person who's written 30 some odd books on the subject. So I had some touch points with some people during the journey that would give me some additional feedback. But ultimately, the thing that broke me wide open was the knowing that there are forces at work that you cannot see.
Yeah.
Right. So like when I knew that, and I'd had patterns in my life where those forces intervened, I was about to go to jail, and next thing you know, the judge is telling me you should become an author because I wrote him a letter begging for leniency. And he says, you should be writing in college. This is some of the best words I've ever seen.
Wow.
And so there's always been, my
little nudges
to get me back on track when I made major missteps.
Yeah.
And then, so they were always there with me. I just didn't really understand it and see it. And now I have a full appreciation for it as a result of these losses.
Yeah.
So, but I would also say that, the most important thing is I ask for prayer from my fan base, and you can't underestimate the power of having 10,000 people praying for you.
Yeah.
Right. So like I would go with vulnerability and say, please pray for me. I'm losing my mother. And so I can't take credit for this. I had a lot of people praying behind the scenes for me that I didn't even know of. I had friends praying for me that, maybe they couldn't show up the way they wanted to, but they could pray for me.
Yeah.
And I think it was an accumulation of those prayers, my prayers, and then my deep curiosity about the spiritual realm that really had me get through to where I'm at today. And now I can tell you that it's been a journey. It was, I'm 2 years into my journey now of when I had my lowest of low points. And it's been a journey, and the process each month with each new moon, I reflect on what did I change? What did I remove? What negative thinking is no longer with me? What habits have I changed? How much more activated am I in the light? And each month over that 2-year period, as I do my meditation practices and as I do my prayer practices, I see the evolution on a month-by-month basis. And so I'm just on this journey like everybody else. I'm just
day.
2 years into it. And I dedicate a tremendous amount of my time toward it. Like I restrict 50% of my time from anybody and everybody when I can. When I have my son, it's a little harder, or if we're doing an event or something like that. But, I'm constantly seeking to restrict so that I could deeply connect. I get up at 4 or 5 every morning. I do my meditation before I meet anyone. I'm 3 hours deep into understanding where I'm at before I seek to connect to anyone.
I love that. That's so important.
Yeah.
So you meditate and you're praying and you're taking care of you first thing in the morning, every morning. Non-negotiable. And I do it midday as well. So I take a break to try to reset my energy. And one of the things that I try to do is I do a process called replay the tape, where I want to go back through each encounter. So like this encounter that you and I have had, I can't process this right now. I have to go actually spend time thinking about it, right? If I'm with you, you're in it.
If I'm present. In it, I'm not sitting there thinking to myself,
of course,
she said this. I'm not, I'm flowing. So each encounter that I have in my life is a gift to me, no matter who it is. It could be a person I bump into on a hike that asks me a question about directions. You know, what was I supposed to learn from that person? You know, what did I feel? What did I think? So I spend my time when I am in meditation, and after meditation, I'll spend my time thinking about myself. What messages did I receive from the prior day?
That's powerful.
Or for the prior experiences that I missed? You know,
so you do that like in the middle of the day or maybe towards the end.
I'm constantly trying, because
love that.
I don't want to meet 50 people a day. I just want to get a message from one person or an affirmation. Like you affirmed to me about vulnerability in this conversation, and both of us opening up and tearing up, right? Like there's a magic there.
Totally.
that this conversation had to happen for me to go there, right? So, okay, I'm on the right path. That's confirmation, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I want to like challenge you guys watching / listening, like create some space for yourself to do it even for a week. Just challenge yourself for a week, and really take, what do you call it again?
Replay the tape.
Replay the tape. And do you journal it out
Yeah.
at all? Yeah.
I will journal for the more meaningful encounters, but I trained my memory to rethink through the conversations. What did I miss? What did I get? Right? What was it true? Because whether you believe in God or the source, or you just believe in quantum physics, there is a lesson to be had here that is so multifaceted. Yes. You can only really capture a few, based on your perspective and observation, a few of the components of the lesson.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to grow to receive the lesson. So you want to go back and try to replay the tape of the lesson a month from now, a week from now, and you'll get a whole new perspective on it.
So true. Yeah. That's so true. I love that. Okay, so can you define for me what an altar call moment is to you?
Yeah.
I would love to. Yeah,
for sure. Well, an altar call moment is one of those moments that we've had where we've just known that, you know, there is a force in the universe. There is something else out there that is guiding me, that is leading me, or it's a moment where you're called to change, or a moment where you're called to elevate. We have these moments that are distinctive moments of transformation that happen to us in our lives. Sometimes we take action on them and we elevate. Sometimes we don't, and we go backward. And so what I've learned in my life is when I had those moments, like when my mother met her Prince Charming, and he then took me underneath his wing, I made a commitment to change, that I wouldn't steal from him, and that I would leave the gang environment that I was in. That was an altar call moment. I honored it. I did everything that I could to learn from this man, because he was a gift from God to me.
Yes.
And I still honor him to this day. And so that was a moment. Now, had I just discarded that moment, or thought it was about me, or look at me, or I have better luck, I wouldn't have actually received the lesson the universe was trying to give me, or the gift. And so at AlterCall, what we do is we help people have those moments, or we help people grow from the moments that they've already had. And so we're really about capturing and honoring that moment of a person where they are called to elevate or called to change, and help them get the things out of them that are preventing them from stepping into their fullest version of themselves.
So would you say altar call moments typically stem from a very painful moment?
It can be painful, but it can be a complete blessing as well.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you hit the lottery, right? That's an altar call moment. The universe gave you a gift that it doesn't give to every other person. But then what happens to most people is they don't honor it as such, and then they create misery in their lives.
Totally.
And within 5 years, they're broke and they're miserable, right? Why? Because they didn't just say, oh, someone gave me $100 million. Imagine all the kids I can help with that. They're like, no, I'm going to quit my job and never work again, and spend my time jet skiing and traveling and blah, 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 and buy a mansion. And they didn't realize that maybe the universe gave you money so that you could help people in a way that other people can't. Right? It'll make a lesson out of you one way or the other. Right? So an altar call moment can be a moment of pleasure or a moment of pain, but it's what we do with those moments that really determine, the rest of our lives. Like, these are gifts to steer you back on course or to accelerate your progress. Right?
Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah. It's like, how do we use that and channel forward?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, back on even this past year, a couple of altar call moments I've had, even like.
Do you want to share one? I'd love to hear one.
Well, a big one was the meeting I had with Gary Vaynerchuk.
I know Gary. I love him.
Yeah, that was a really big for me, because I He gave me some insanely powerful feedback and interruptive feedback. I mean, you know how bold
That's how
and
he is.
straightforward he is. He doesn't sugarcoat anything, of course. So, there I was, not expecting it at all. And then he just goes full-fledged into, you're playing into a stereotype, like you're hiding, like, literally just starts like, what the are you doing? Like Gary loves to cuss. And he's just like literally just pounding at me in the way that he does. And I needed to hear that. It was shocking at first, and then I bawled my eyes out. I cried. I was just sharing this with my mastermind group actually yesterday on the call, and they didn't know the full story, but basically I was playing into a stereotype of what I thought was socially acceptable for me to be in the eyes of public, in the eyes of people, that it wouldn't be socially acceptable for me to be a marketing strategist, for me to be a businesswoman, that I needed to be. I don't know if you know this, but my backstory, I was in doing fitness videos, and I had a 14-day booty challenge.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he was like, what the are you doing? Like, this isn't you. You're a brilliant business mind. Like, do you realize that nobody knows what you do, Ashley? And I'm like, and I realized I was hiding, because I had so many people in my life telling me, assuming I was dumb, assuming I was like beauty no brains, or like, oh, whose +1 are you at this marketing event? There's no way, like you're just here. Like, people automatically discrediting me based on my appearance or how I dressed, whatever it was, that I started to internalize that. And so that was an AlterCall moment for me, because it was the feedback I needed to hear. And he literally was like, this is what's do you realize how brilliant you are? And you have a voice that you can share, and you can inspire more women like you to step into their power, to own their voice and their brilliance. And so, well,
Gary is an angel.
Right.
He is, whether people see it or not. He's breaking people out of their story. Right. And I watch his videos. I've known him personally. I've co-invested in projects with him. He has a spiritual gift, whether he calls it spiritual or not. It's a spiritual gift. He can break people out of their story. And he broke you out of your story, and that's beautiful.
Totally.
But so if I had a similar experience like that, I would be like, whoa, that's an AlterCall moment. What am I supposed to do with this? Right. Because he did it out of kindness. He wasn't charging you for this advice. He was trying to just elevate you as best as he could. And the universe or God or whatever you believe in will send you, the old proverb, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
Right. And so, I mean, that's literal. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. So, you have to think to yourself, if I need a new teacher, then I have to ready myself as the student. And like you, in your case, that teacher was exactly what you needed as a student for you then to take your life to the next elevation.
Yeah. And totally, I did. I stepped into the light. Omni Media Marketing became Ashley Hann,
I love it.
Like everything, I just stepped into the light, and I owned every part about who I was. I got vulnerable on video and shared why I was hiding with everyone, which was very scary for me. And now I'm where I'm at, sitting here with you, and I have a podcast, because this is why I have the podcast, was that very moment.
That's awesome.
So
and you were called to change, and you changed. And you should congratulate yourself. That is the hardest thing for a human being to do, is to realize they were called, and you're called to lead. And so what Gary was doing is, God was speaking through him to you, right, at that particular moment. And what he was doing was calling you to a higher level of leadership, because the world needs more leaders, right? We all are called to that. And I look at, we're in the age of messengers. So Gary is a messenger. You have Gerard Adams as a messenger. I'm a messenger. You're a messenger. There's thousands of messengers out there that are messaging a different way of doing business in this world. And we had messages before that were societal, and those institutions are being disrupted. Should we go to college? Should we not go to college? Is a message that, that I used to have complete shame that I dropped out of college for so long, even as a successful entrepreneur. But now, I don't have any shame on that subject whatsoever. I've created many very successful businesses that have done lots and lots of revenue and exited for tons of money, but I still had societal shame around dropping out of college. And now I realize, like, that's just ridiculous that I would, have some sort of shame based on what other people think. Guys like Gary and and a variety of other influencers out there that are really, crafting and delivering a message. It's kind of an age. We're changing. Society's changing. And even though we might think we're inundated because I follow 50 influencers and so I'm seeing similarities in message, we have to be a broken record. We have to get this message out.
Totally.
To change the consciousness of our society.
Yep.
We need thousands of more messengers. Like we don't have enough. Teachers are not able to get the job done in school because they're confined by the curriculum that is 50 years old.
Yep.
They're not able to talk about spirituality because they'll get sued. They're not able to talk about the truth about college or the truth about entrepreneurship because they don't know it.
They're not teaching emotional intelligence.
They're not. Yeah, they're not teaching you anything. They're not teaching you how to pay your taxes. They're not teaching you how a mortgage works. So you're going to get out of school and be left with 10% of what is necessary to be a successful human being.
Yeah.
Right?
So
you get 10% of the 90% equation
Yeah.
through school. I did end up going to college and I went to a great university and I got a lot out of my education, but 90% of what I know today did not come from that.
I 100% can concur with that. I have the same experience.
Yeah. So we're just teachers. And the greater the teacher, the larger the following that they have. And, I look at myself and I've just started to come to the identity of a teacher. And that's really all that I am, right? I'm a teacher and I teach through my experience.
Yeah.
And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And, everything is a byproduct of that. The more that I teach my team that I'm just starting with at AlterCall, the more successful we become.
Yeah.
The more that I teach my fans, the more people that buy my books, right?
Yeah.
We're just teachers and the world needs more teachers. There's 40 people per classroom right now and the teachers are underpaid. They're stressed beyond you can imagine. They're required to teach in a certain way that leaves a lot of children behind.
Yeah.
And so the world is really suffering because of a lack of teachers and messengers. And that's what we're here doing.
Yeah. And it's not about comparing the way that you teach to and what other people, my biggest pet peeve is like, oh, well, there's somebody already teaching that. It's already saturated. No, like every voice counts and every voice is different.
Yeah.
Like the way that you teach is so different than the way that I teach, the way that Gerard teaches, the way that Gary teaches. Like it's all so different. And you could hear a message, a million times, but you could have that one person that just lands it for you.
Yeah. And who cares if I'm not called to teach 1 million people, so be it. I'm called to teach 100,000 people, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
As long as you can help beyond yourself. So the first rule is fix yourself and then go help others, right?
Yes.
So get yourself into a place where you're aligned, mind, body, and spirit, and then help as many other people awaken as well. And if we all just do our best at that with the capacity that we have, we will change the world.
100%.
That is all we need to do, right? Like I don't measure myself by other people because they're just a better teacher than me.
Yeah.
And maybe I have the skill or the aptitude to build the skill to turn into the talent to be as good of a teacher as that person. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I'm happy teaching 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm happy teaching 1,000 people. But can you imagine, like, that is a lot of people. To say
Absolutely.
you are a teacher of 1,000 people, you can be very successful teaching 1,000 people in our society.
Yeah.
Right? You can make a great income doing that.
Yeah.
And so I don't see saturation. This is the very beginning of the age of the messenger.
I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's like so much more that I could dive into with you. It's like, I'm like, gosh, dang it. We're like at the end of it, but
I'll come back if you want to have me.
I know,
I'd
round
love that.
two, because I mean, we totally went, like I said, a place I wasn't expecting to go, but I felt called to go there with you.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that we did that together. So, so I'm going to put links in the podcast description, of course. AlterCall, by the way, he just had an AlterCall and I was here, but I wasn't able to go because I was unfortunately ill with the flu. So I was so close yet so far. But I'm excited to potentially go to the next one that you guys do. So can you kind of share a little bit on that? And I'll include the links for them in the description so they can learn more.
Excellent. Yeah. AlterCall is a transformational experience that we do where we help people, open up and get the negative out of them and be filled with positive so that they can do what their soul's here to do. We host the events in my home in the Hollywood Hills. We do 1 or 2 a month. If you go to my Instagram, Real Ryan Blair, you'll see a link in my bio that talks to you about the process, and altercall.com as well is the domain name. And yeah, it's a transformational experience where we work with a select group of people. It's very intimate. And we just pour in, all of our facilitators pour in to really helping that person get through whatever they need to get through so that they can elevate and they can activate themselves and others.
And it's a day or a day and a half kind of.
It's a 36-hour intensive experience. And we also have an advocate program for people that want to actually advocate the movement. And we're going to be building out the infrastructure of this business. It's only a few months old.
Exciting.
Yeah. It's, my last company, scaled to $600-something million a year in sales and impacted 3 million plus people. And so, I believe that all of the work I've done as an entrepreneur has led me to this place here. And there's a team assembling, and it's brand new, and it's a startup, and it's fun. So I'm back at it, and there's new technology, and there's it's such a new environment to do it, and it's just a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I've kind of got to see some of the behind the scenes, and I mean, you guys are creating something epic, something super powerful that gets to touch the lives of definitely a lot more people. So I'm really excited for that for you guys.
Well, I made the commitment. I said, if I could get through the pain. And if I could get my son healthy, and his autism is now healed, like he no longer suffers the effects of autism. And so I was in that period of time that we talked about, I told God, if I can heal myself and heal my son, I will do everything I can to spend the rest of my life giving back and nothing more. So I've dedicated my life to this. I've dedicated all of my assets to this. This movement is, it's what I've been born to do and to create. And so I appreciate you opening up and sharing your AlterCall moment and being a part of the movement. It's amazing.
Thank you. And thank you for listening, you guys. And please share this message out because it's powerful. And if you have anyone that can, like this whole first half of our conversation about grief, like share it with someone that you feel can really benefit from what Ryan so vulnerably shared with us. I just think that was so powerful. And of course, screenshot your favorite parts, tag us on Instagram. We'd love to see it and interact with you on there. And Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing your heart so openly, so vulnerably. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for sharing too. It was beautiful.